Hi everyone, we'll get started in a minute or so. We'll just wait for stragglers to make their way in.
Right. Can you see me all right, Ben?
Yeah, yep, I can see you.
Cool.
Yep.
Hi everyone. Let me know if there's any issues. I'm on the chat as well. Okay, so if anyone struggles to see or hear or anything, just let me know, and we'll see what we can do to fix it.
Cool. Okay, all right. We're a minute past the hour, so we may as well get started. Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar on the 2021 standalone VR headset market. My name is Ben Bowett. I'm the CEO of the Facilitate VR training platform. Co-hosting with me today is Philip Saylor, Facilitate Psychology and Human Factors Lead.
Hello.
And we're very fortunate today to have HTC Vive's Australia and New Zealand country manager, Thomas Dexmier, join us. It's very topical to have Thomas join this session, given the exciting announcements from HTC last week. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from him and ask your questions of him later in the hour. So this session will be recorded, and a copy of the deck will also be available for downloading later. So you can refer back to all the information covered. Cool, so next slide, please, Tessa. Thank you. So yeah, we wanted to run this session really to help everyone get their heads around the rapidly evolving standalone headset market. There are a couple of reasons why we are only focusing on standalone devices today. However, the main one is really from our perspective. We believe the future of VR for the vast majority of training and education applications will largely be with standalone devices. And we'll do a bit of a comparison between standalone and tethered later on, but that's sort of the main reason for focusing on this. So ultimately, we're running this session today so you can make educated decisions about the most appropriate device or devices for your VR solutions. Next slide, thanks. And so, we'll go about this, firstly, introducing who we are and what Facilitate is. We'll cover core VR terminology. We'll look at the three main players in the standalone enterprise headset market at the moment. We'll discuss key considerations when evaluating your headset options, and how each of the Focus 3, the Quest 2, and the Neo 3 compare. And then we'll invite Thomas into the conversation and get his insights in this space before opening the floor to Q&A from you all. Next slide, thanks. So who are we? Well, really the company behind Facilitate, Unleashed. We built the Facilitate platform to help organizations scale their use of VR training and education. And we do this by opening up our platform to VR content creators, so both agencies and internal development teams. And then they work with training and or L&D teams so they can easily create, manage, and deploy VR programs at scale. So Facilitate, it includes all the usual admin functions you'd expect of an enterprise-grade platform, such as content database and aggregation tools, account and scheduling system, review functions, LMS integration, and VR and PC apps as well. So we've really tried to think of everything so you can get on with content creation and deploying awesome VR experiences. So if you'd like to learn more, our details at the end of the presentation. Next slide, thanks. So yeah, we'd like to begin. I'll just get this poll question up and running. Yeah, we'd like to begin really to get a sense of the types of organizations you all work in. So this will give us a bit of an insight into who is really keen to learn about the standalone headset market. It'll also help us sort of frame the focus of future webinars going forward, knowing who is really keen to jump on these types of sessions. So we've got results coming through. So it actually looks like we've got quite a few VR content producers, which is great to see. So some of our peers in the VR industry. So we've got a few more results still coming through. Just give it a few more seconds. Cool. All right, I'll end it there. So I'll share these results. So we've got, mainly VR content producers, then next educational organizations, training organizations. We've got a little bit from government and SME as well. Cool. All right. Well, that's great to see. We've got quite a range of attendees. So thank you all for coming. So firstly, we'll cover terminology just basically, so everyone has a shared understanding of the things that we'll be referring to. So firstly, you're probably all aware of the term HMD, but just in case, it's an abbreviation of head-mounted display, so otherwise a headset. Tethered devices refers to a headset that's typically connected via a cable to a PC with a decent graphics card, often dedicated gaming computers. They generally provide the opportunity to run very high-end graphics and have a greater range of accessories that you can use for them as well. They're typically better for fixed setups, so physically fixed setups with more equipment needed and a bit more setup involved. On the other hand, standalone headsets, the topic for today, they're headsets that have the processor inbuilt into them, so you don't need a computer or a mobile phone to run them. And just a side note here that devices such as the Focus 3 and the Quest 2, they have the ability to connect to PCs via a linking cable as well. So you can actually get highest end of content and things such as Steam VR through these devices these days as well, but they're just options, they're not required. Next slide, thanks. So this one is in a way becoming a bit more irrelevant, but we thought it's just necessary to cover all bases. So really 3 DOF or 3 degrees of freedom, it means that the headset's user's rotation is tracked. However, their position isn't. So for example, it allows you to look left, right, up and down, but as soon as you move either forward or back or side to side, you don't actually move within the content. The content moves with you. So there can be a bit of a disconnect between what your brain expects and what it perceives, and can increase nausea and the like. So 6 DOF, on the other hand, 6 degrees of freedom, allows you to move freely within your virtual world. And this is incredibly powerful and really critical for computer graphics-based training content, where a trainee needs to interact with virtual objects and actually move within the virtual space. So the reason why we think it's becoming increasingly irrelevant around 3 DOF is that most of those headsets have actually been discontinued. And in our opinion, largely due to the rise and affordability of exceptional 6 DOF standalone headsets. So 6 DOF really is the standard now. So next slide. So this, I'll go over this just very quickly. They're more project-specific terms that we'll be referring to. So when we talk about VR solution, we mean more than just a headset, but the core pieces that need to come together to form the overall package to solve a business or training or L&D problem. So the headset's content and more an underlying enabling platform. So your team here, we're referring not just to your internal resources, but also external contractors or agencies to help with content, strategy, deployment, etc. And audience and user, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's in the L&D and training space, it's the end beneficiary who putting the devices on and experiencing the immersive content. So next slide, thanks. So now we just want to look at the actual enterprise devices themselves. So they generally fall into 2 categories targeted at consumers or enterprise. And by enterprise, we're referring to businesses, government, education, not-for-profits, etc. But we thought it would be useful to do a bit of a side-by-side comparison to outline what really sets the 2 apart. As physically they can often look the same and can have similar hardware specs too, depending on who the manufacturer is. But so going through this list, also note that these are just general comments, and they really, on this slide at least, contain quite much of our opinion. And with such a rapidly evolving and fluid market as the VR headset space, there are varying opinions out there and a changing landscape. So just keep that in mind when we're comparing these 2 here. So firstly, enterprise devices are more and more designed for multiple users in mind. So some being made of materials that are easier to clean or greater durability, etc. Enterprise devices also finding most use in education, training, visualizations of different types, and and increasingly in collaboration environments as well. Whereas consumer applications obviously usually falling in the wide range of entertainment areas, games, media, social apps, and actually it's great to see more and more in fitness and wellness as well. But we're seeing increasing demand for standalone devices in the enterprise space, with the portability and ease of use really being massive draw cards for workplaces and education. But there are still a number of cases where tethered devices are more appropriate for enterprise use. But the inroads being made with the specs available on standalone devices, it's really starting to blur the lines quite a bit between the different types. So, yep, in terms of price, enterprise devices are coming with price tags sometimes twice or more higher than their consumer counterparts, often covering things like extended warranty, priority support, sometimes MDM solutions included as well. And possibly even factoring in other commercial considerations around opportunity cost of not monetizing data, perhaps. Yeah, anyway, on to the next slide. So looking at the actual devices themselves, in covering these headsets, we really are aiming to be as fact-based as possible, drawing on our experience and what others have been telling us in this space as well, with the ultimate aim just to give you the information you need to make informed decisions. So what I'll go through now is only really a high-level overview of the main standalone options in the market, and Philip will go into more detail about the considerations for each of them shortly. So the Quest, it's brought to you by Oculus, which is owned by US tech giant Facebook. The Quest range has been in the market for 2 years now, with the original Quest being discontinued a few months back now due to the release of the Quest 2. Quest 2 is available as either an enterprise or consumer device. We've only, so you've got the link there for the enterprise buying page. Only that one, because given the focus on enterprise in this session. However, the consumer version is available via Amazon, I believe for just short of $500 or thereabouts. But as we'll discuss throughout this session, there are some really important trade-offs if you go down this consumer path, probably none less than needing to link it to a Facebook account. So the Quest 2 enterprise version is only available in US dollars by Oculus reseller. For us in Australia, I believe is Exertus in the UK. Next slide, please, Tessa. Thanks. So onto the Focus range, which is part of Taiwanese tech conglomerate HTC's Vive ecosystem. Very timely for this session, Vive launched the Focus 3 last week. I might add, along with the next gen Vive Pro 2, which is a tethered headset and won't be covering today. But the Focus 3 is the successor of the Focus Plus, which is still available in the market. And the Focus Plus has been in the market for about 2 years. And from memory, Focus Plus is the 6DoF version of the original Focus. That was a 3DoF headset that I'm not sure if it was only available in China, but it certainly was sold a lot throughout China. And I don't believe made it to the Australian market. But the Focus 3 is very much, it appears to be an enterprise specific product, and there's a number of interesting features in there that seem to be very much built for the enterprise space. There's no consumer version of this device as well. So Philip will go into a lot more detail about these features, and I'm sure Thomas will elaborate a bit more on them later as well. So the Focus 3 will be released on the 24th or 25th of next month, for those that can get orders in quickly enough, I imagine. And then it will be available later on via Synex's resellers in the Australia and New Zealand market. And we've also included the link there for the Focus 3 pre-release sales page as well. So next slide, thanks. So the Neo headsets are from Chinese headset manufacturer Pico. Interestingly, something to note is that Pico and Vive have very strong standing in China due to Facebook's absence from that market. But anyway, the Pico Neo range includes the Neo 2, which has been available for a year, but is already being followed up by the Neo 3 and Neo 3i. The Neo 3 devices are also aimed at the enterprise market with the eye, including eye tracking capability inbuilt into the device as well. Hence the high price tag of the two options. So we've included the sales inquiry page link there on this slide, and I believe that the two devices will be available sometime next quarter, but no specific release date available yet. So next slide, please. So the next section, we're going to cover some of the main considerations to help you choose the most appropriate device. But we also have another poll question. So I'll just launch this one. We really want to get a sense of, what are the biggest challenges you're facing using headsets in your organization or in your work. We've included the topics that we'll be covering later today. So yeah, it'd be great to just get people's opinions on this. So we've got the results coming through at the moment. It's like watching a horse race. You kind of got one leading and then one comes back, and
I think it'd be good. It might help me focus a little bit if there's a clear standout here. I can focus a little bit more time on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be good.
Looks like there's, we'll just wait a few more seconds because the results are still coming through. Yep, maybe we'll call it there. So it looks like it's a tie between large-scale onboarding and deployment and ease of use. Yep, shortly followed by security and IT. Cool. Okay. Great. Thanks for that, everyone.
Interesting. Yep. Yeah, thank you.
I'll pass over to Philip now.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Ben. All right, guys. Hello again. My name's Philip, and I'll talk through the main considerations now. I'll be as quick as I can with this content, because I think probably most of you will want to ask a few questions, especially of Thomas, and just in general have a bit of Q&A, so we'll leave some time for that. So let's get into it. So these are the 5 areas that I'll cover. We believe these are the main areas that have bearing on your HMD solution. So which device you pick, how many, those sorts of additional services that you might get with it. So I'll go through these each in turn and go from there. All right, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so starting with your solution, the first part of your solution is the audience. So it's got nothing to do with headsets, but as a psychologist, I guess I'm a little bit biased, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, we're trying to get devices on people's heads. We want them to have an experience, and we want them to, if we're talking training or learning, fundamentally what we're doing is behavior change, right? We want someone to do something different, better, faster, safer, whatever the type of training or learning may be. So the first place, in my opinion, that you need to start is with your audience. And the considerations that we've listed here are fairly straightforward. This is not new stuff, but you need to understand who's going to use the device. So your demographic, age can be a factor. Not necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean older people are less likely to be able to make use of the technology. Not at all. You need to understand. You need to get a sense check of the culture in your organisation, so you'll know how likely people are to to push back or to struggle with new things or with change in general or not. And you'll also know if you have any specific requirements around differently abled people, diversity issues, and the technical, just a simple, technical ability of your people. So definitely consider that. And what we would recommend is that as I go through all these 5 aspects, just whatever falls out of that, you make a note of that, and then you take all that and you reconcile that against what your hardware provider it tells you is possible, what your content provider tells you is possible, and those sorts of things, just to have that reconciliation. The second part of the audience, so technically the audience, but who's going to implement this? So have you got people in your organisation that are both tech savvy and have a little bit of understanding of change management? Again, if the cultures might be a little bit less receptive of new things, or it might be the opposite. You might not have a problem with that, but make sure you give it some thought. So who's going to own this change process? Because it is a new modality and it is very, very foreign to a lot of people. And what are their experience and what are their requirements of a headset? So talk to these people early would be our recommendation there. Cool, thanks, Tessa. The content is the second part of the solution. So we're talking here about the training, the actual material that the end user is going to consume, in a sense. So the video they're going to watch, the simulation they're going to interact with, all those sorts of things. So I imagine people out there will be at different stages. Some of you may have done a proof of concept already and you know a little bit about what these things are and what they can do for you. And others may have not even done any discovery work. But generally, they'll be in two categories. So 360-based imagery content. So we're talking 360-degree images that you can look at that are static, or 360-degree videos that, again, you can look at in all directions, but that play and show something. And that may also contain hotspots and waypoints, so you can navigate to different images and stuff. If that's the dominant content you'll be using, the capability of most headsets will play a video without any problems. What you may need to look at there a little bit more than with simulations is the storage space, because they can take up quite a bit of space, especially when you have a lot of high resolution videos. One of our clients is having that
Sorry, Philip, it looks like you may have frozen there. How's your internet connection looking? Oh, there you go. It looks like Philip's dropped out. Imagine he'll be back very soon. Yeah, I can continue until Philip comes back in. So yeah, he was talking about one of our clients basically filming a lot of 360 content and quite quickly going to be close to maxing out the storage on their existing device. So just making sure that you're choosing the right headset based off the...
Sorry about that. Am I back now?
Yeah, yep, all good.
Yeah,
yep.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Just totally
no worries. Okay.
Okay, let me just do that. Yeah, so making sure that you've got the right ability. And again, what you need to do there is just ask your content vendor, so who's building the simulation for you, just ask them what are the requirements to run this piece of content smoothly. The other thing is to think about future proofing. So think long term. So you might start with just a set of 360 videos, but you may very quickly realize this is a very powerful training medium and we'd like to move to simulations. And then you may have picked a headset on the basis of 360 imagery alone, and now you might be lacking a little bit for the high-end simulations. So give that a little bit of thought. Okay, we'll leave that one there. So what we've got here is a table of the three main solutions that Ben's gone through, and just some of the key parameters here. Look, I won't go through this in a lot of detail because the actual specs might not make a whole lot of meaningful sense to you in terms of, well, will this work for my learning problem, my business problem? But this is more for reference for you for later on. The only things I'll call out with the Vive in particular, the storage space, you'll see there it has a micro SD. So essentially with those with these cards, you can slot in a bigger card. So you've got a lot of storage capacity there. So that bears on the 360 video example I was giving, but only if you're doing, lots of videos, would that be relevant. And also the swappable battery for the Vive as well. So, if you're thinking these headsets are out on site and people are rotating through them all day to do a certain set of training in the lead up to something, having a battery, being able to just, a set of batteries being able to just swap out is very, very, very powerful as well. But I'll leave that one there. So that's for your future reference. Okay, let's move on to the key takeaways for your solution. So I won't read through these. You can have a bit of a look again for reference later on. But consider your audience, who you're dealing with. Get a pulse check of how it's going to work for them, and consider the content. And just remember, the content can be made for the headset. So simulation can be this good or it can be that good. So just start with a learning objective and just be a bit realistic, and obviously taking your budget into account, what's required to make to achieve the learning outcome. Cool. So the next one is scaling and management. I think this is one that was of interest. So the main thing here we're talking about going from a proof of concept with 3 or 4 headsets that sit maybe in a couple of different locations to an organisation wide. So you might be talking hundreds of headsets. They could be geographically dispersed, so all over the state, the country, international even, and you need to move from that point, from the proof of concept upwards. So the main thing here that's relevant is the mass device management. So it's sometimes abbreviated as MDM. And each of the 3 manufacturers, as you can see there, offer some version of this, with Pico being sort of the exception, but offering it through a third-party provider. So basically, just to put this into a bit of context, think about how computers or any other IT devices managed currently in your organisation. So there'll be a central IT team who'll be able to remote into these devices and manage them from a security and updating perspective. And the same thing needs to happen with your headsets. So any solution that has more than 2 or 3 headsets really, or that are headsets that are distributed, will need to have this. The key question to ask, and to ask this early in your project, is who in your organisation is going to own this? And by this I mean the management, the ongoing management of the devices. Maybe it's IT. You could potentially also outsource this, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. As a managed service, you get a provider in to do all this for you. That is also possible. But if you do it internally, make sure you talk to these people early and ask them what they need. What are their requirements to do that? Cool. We'll leave that one there. So there's some main takeaways there. The last one there I didn't really talk about, but it's just the warranty and the support. So there wasn't a lot of interest in that one from the poll, but just make sure that you reconcile what is provided by the manufacturer or the vendor, that it meets the minimum acceptable downtime of the solution. So if you need to have training happening every single day without fail, that needs to be factored into the level of support that you're getting. So you'll need backup headsets, especially if they're remote, those sorts of things, just quite common sense stuff. But this level of support does vary quite a bit across the manufacturers, so give some thought to that one. Okay, next. Security. So definitely always a topical one. Again, just some basics. Really, headsets are treated generally in a network, from a network and security perspective, as a connected mobile device. They will almost always require an internet connection to work. There are some exceptions, maybe where you pre-download the content and they may not require that. But generally, they will need to be a connected device. Again, fairly straightforward, but make sure you talk to the people who will manage this early on. Understand the non-negotiables in your organisation, what the policies are around certain aspects of this. Again, if you outsource this, talk to those people as well and see where the interfaces are in terms of the data going backwards and forwards with your organisation systems, so maybe your LMS or such, and consider that stuff as early as possible. The other one there is the privacy and data policies that will come with the devices and any bundled software that you use. Consider where it's stored if you need data sovereignty or those sorts of aspects, especially if you've got a lot of user information on there or commercially sensitive information. You may not, but give some thought to that, because again, they vary quite a little bit in this stage across the manufacturers. Obviously, Oculus is run by Facebook. We have had some challenges with some clients around that and the requirement to have a Facebook account just to even get the device running, etc. On the other hand, Pico is created by a Chinese manufacturer. So you've potentially got some geopolitical considerations there. If you think about the example of Huawei, the mobile manufacturer, who've essentially sort of been locked out of the Australian sort of market because of geopolitical considerations. So unfortunately, it's a reality of something that we need to consider as well. The other thing to point out there with the Vive as well, there is local as in on the device, encrypted data of all tracking data that comes from the device. So it's stored locally and it's encrypted on the device as well. So again, they'll vary a bit, but just be clear of what you need and reconcile it against what's being offered. Cool. Yeah, the terms and conditions, as I mentioned, so both of the hardware and any bundled software that you'll use if you're using a platform or maybe with some of the content, it might also come with terms and conditions. All right, thanks, Tessa. Okay, setup and deployment. So what we're talking about here is you ordered 100 devices, 50 devices, they've come in, they need to be unboxed, they need to be set up, they need to go through that security setup phase. The content needs to be put on there and they need to get sent out to your different sites if that's the case, or they need to be put somewhere and then people need to be trained. Again, there's a little bit of variation across the manufacturers here. So Oculus, as we've already said, we have the Oculus for Business requirement there at this stage. Vive offers offline deployment with an SD card. And you can also have third-party mass device management support. And Pico only offer third-party mass device management support. So someone else will come in and support you with that. But give some thought to, again, who's going to own this in your organisation? Who's going to do it? Is it your IT, or are you better off getting a vendor to come in and help you with that? Again, as a managed service, which is definitely possible. The other thing you need to consider is the ease of use. So I think this was certainly one that was highlighted in the poll. So from our experience, look, they're definitely, the generation of headsets we're dealing with here are definitely very user friendly. We've done a lot of demos. Most people we demo to who've never put on a headset, are generally fine. But it does really depend on the first point that I made. That's your audience, and I can't speak to that. You need to understand your people yourself and what level of training that they are going to need to do that. But there'll probably be a little something that needs to go along with that. So you need to factor that in. Most of the ease of use features are sort of outlined, but the best thing that we would recommend from our experience, if you're in L&D or you're looking to implement something, is just try it yourself at an absolute minimum. Put it on, try it, have an experience, and just ask yourself, is this going to work for my people? Are our employees going to be able to do this, or what sort of training are they going to need? The other thing is consider how you're going to deploy your content. So if you've just got 100 headsets and they're all set up, charged and plugged into the Wi-Fi, ready to go out to site or wherever, how's the content going to go on there? Is it just one or two simulations, or have you got a whole suite of things that need to get onto the headset in the first place? And then once they're out to site or wherever they are, that content may need to be changed and updated. So that's where a platform would certainly come in to help you to manage that, and also some of the user information. So, who's doing what type of training and when are they doing it? So give some thought to setting that one up as well. I think that's it for that one. Yeah, so understand who's involved in your organisation, who's going to own this process. The other one I haven't covered on there is the leasing option. So I'll just mention that now. So in terms of the device management, that can certainly be outsourced, but even in terms of purchasing now, you'll find there are options such as leasing, where no upfront upfront payment is required, and you can lease to own or not. There are some different versions of that. You can explore that with the different vendors. The other one there is motion sickness. So look, we've done a lot of demonstrations to a lot of people who've not used VR. It does happen occasionally, but with the modern headsets, it's certainly getting rarer and rarer. But I'm sure you've got a D&I policy there that states you need some sort of alternative. So consider potentially a platform that allows you to have a computer-based alternative to it. So people who can't wear a headset for those sorts of reasons, they can use, say, do it on a computer or a phone or something like that, that you have an alternative to it. Okay. Safety and hygiene now. So obviously quite topical. So we'll start with safety. This might not be obvious, but essentially what you're doing is you're putting something over someone's eyes and in essence taking away what they can hear. And then you're asking them to, potentially move around and interact in quite gross ways. So obviously there's a risk of, running into things and those sorts of areas. So give that some thought, especially if you're going to send them out to sites and you've got, people in different areas. You're not in a dedicated VR room in an office, in a metro area. So minimum safety features to look for, which everyone's got, is pass-through cameras. So essentially you create a little guardian around yourself, you put the headset on, and whilst you're in that zone that you've marked, you see the virtual world. But once you move past that, the cameras facing forwards will turn on and then you'll see the real world, so you can stop short of running into that wall. Everyone offers that now. There's slightly different flavors of it, seated and standing, and the size of the area as well. But that's pretty much standard now. The other thing I'll just mention on safety is just, again, reconcile it with the people in your organisation who are responsible for this, your safety committee. It may be in your work health and safety policy already, probably not. If not, you just need to understand what their requirements are for you to be able to deploy a solution like this safely. Thanks, Tessa. The next one will be hygiene. So the main thing here you're really looking for, you're obviously putting these devices on your face, and as Ben said, with commercial training, with enterprise-grade headsets, they're kind of designed to be reused by different people, as maybe a little bit different to consumer. So basically, you're looking for a removable faceplate, or at the very least, something that's easy to clean. And again, most of the manufacturers offer this. I think for Oculus, it's an additional purchase there, but with Vive and Pico, we're getting a PU leather, so it's quite easy to clean. It's a smooth one. Just another option there for you is Clean Box. So this is a commercial solution which decontaminates headsets using UVC light. That's an option as well. You put the headset in there and press a button, and essentially it does some sort of sanitization on it. But just ask yourself again in your project, in your development of it, who's going to own this? Is it the end user at the end of the training session? Do they have to wipe it down or put it in the machine? Or is there, again, is that a managed service that you're even getting from someone, or is it someone inside your organisation? These are little things, but again, if you're scaling and you're going to large volume, this is going to be really important to make sure we've got that covered. Yeah, that's it there. So we've got some questions coming in. So we'll tackle some of that in a minute. So I really just want to hand over to Thomas now as quickly as possible, because he's going to give us some very interesting insights, and we're going to have some time for questions. So Thomas, if you're there and ready to go.
Sure, I'm here, over. But I think you need to start my video.
Yep. Do I do that? I can't see you.
All right.
There you go.
There we are. Okay. Cool. Over to you, Thomas.
Morning, afternoon, wherever you are. It's great to be here, part of this webinar today with Ben and Philip. Just by way of intro, my name's Thomas. I've been with HTC for just over a decade, and obviously since we launched Vive in 2015, been looking at the virtual reality market very, very closely in Australia and New Zealand, and obviously getting some global insights as well. There's been a few really exciting announcements last week, as you all probably know, and I know that Ben and Philip have a few questions for me.
Mm. Yeah, yep. No. Thank you again, Thomas, for joining us. Hang on, where have my questions gone?
Next slide.
Yep, next one.
There we go.
There you
First
go.
one.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Oh,
Phil.
sorry.
Yeah.
We'll do this one. In your experience, Thomas, what are the most important decision points for people to consider when they're selecting a headset?
That's well, we're starting off with a really great question, and I think the starting point is really for everybody to know what problem or operational challenge they want to solve and how. Yeah. So once you've decided and you've defined all that, you should choose a solution rather than picking a HMD in isolation to the rest of the ecosystem. So the way we see it now is that specs and price are no longer the main decision criteria, and Philip's gone through a bunch of things that you need to consider. But my advice really is to look at the breadth of the ecosystem that's out there, the quality of the platform that will allow for device management, security, and specifically access to content, as well as the quality of the local support. You'd be surprised to see how many times you need to talk to people that have the technical expertise on the ground and are very happy to help you when the teams are there. The channel and distribution model as well. And again, not all vendors are born equal in that respect. And I'd like to talk about reverse logistics as well. So what happens when things go well, it's fantastic, but when you start having some issues with hardware, which is likely to happen at some point, depending on what you're using your VR for, what happens and how much support you get on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, thank you. This one probably quite topical. Yeah, do you want to do this one, Ben?
Yeah, yep. I mean, we've been asked, many times about, what's the average lifespan of a headset. This is really a good question, given how quickly devices are advancing. I think back to, I think it was 2017, and recall that, standalone devices were years away, let alone the exceptional 6DoF versions that we have available today. So, I mean, with this in mind, what are Vive doing about the issue of tech obsolescence, and what advice can you give about when you're making decisions, how you can minimize this, really?
Well, I think the first thing to take into account is the fact that yes, tech does evolve, rather quickly. But when you look and you see how the end user's needs do evolve, it's actually even quicker. So it's like a catch-22 thing. But what we do at Vive to avoid the premature obsolescence of the tech is that we create top quality hardware that is designed to last, working with the best materials, the best components right out of the door. And so look at how a product like the original Vive has actually stayed on the shelf. I think it's nearly 4 years. Vive Pro has launched in 2018 and is still going very, very strong. So, 3-4 years is not uncommon when you work with premium, top quality hardware designed to last. But again, my advice is that make sure that you future-proof your investment. And it could be by either selecting a PCVR solution that is open to third-party accessories down the track, or in the case of a standalone product, just opt for devices with slightly higher specs than what you typically need on day one, because you don't want to be caught short and limited by the tech when you're ready to elevate your VR plans and your VR game. And you'd be surprised again to see that these things happen much quicker than what you expect. So think about, Philip was talking about the onboard memory. What do you do about it? What solutions you've got out there? How much do you need now? And try to think about how much you're going to need tomorrow and in 6 months' time. Same for screen resolution. There's a bit of a race to the top in terms of, screen res. Take it into account, and make sure that the content that you'd be consuming or creating with these headsets in 6 months won't require you to upgrade the tech. And if you make that right decision right out of the door, you'll be covered for a good few years.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think there's also that leasing option as well that I talked about.
Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
We've seen that, and it's there's no right or wrong, right? But depending on businesses, there's businesses that rather have the guarantee that they're always using the latest and greatest spec and tech, and lease to return is something that we've actually seen a little bit of, but it comes down to what flexibility and what relationships and commercial relationships you have with your IT resellers, or if you deal with the distributor directly or with the vendor. Make sure that you exhaust all the avenues to give yourself as much flexibility as you can down the track.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Go for it, Bill.
Yeah. This one, I'll take this one. It's a little bit similar to the first one, but what should organisations be asking a vendor or a manufacturer of a headset?
So look, I've actually developed a bit of a map of a journey for VR solutions, and it's clear that vendor engagement is critical. So if you think through a logical flow, think about the procurement of the headset, but also the life cycle and the end of life. Yeah, don't just be focused on rushing in and trying the best possible, or what you think is going to be the best possible hardware at the front door. Questions that will make a big impact on your operations will be around stock, right? So do you carry Australian stock in Australia? Philip, you were mentioning a few things about where the devices are coming from these days. You want to make sure that the kit includes your Australian plugs and has all the Australian certifications specifically around electrical safety. So try and get us some transparency on that, because you want to avoid bad surprises down the track. So first one, Australian stock. Two, commercial warranty. So by default, the gear that you'd buy is designed for a consumer/private use. So commercial warranty is critical for you to get, making sure that there's no bad surprises again down the track. If you come in with a claim on the faulty hardware, and the vendor realize that you've used it for commercial purpose. So in other words, you want to make sure that the vendor has your back, and there are solutions out there. HTC Vive certainly has solutions, and other manufacturers have them, but make sure that commercial warranty applies in the country where you're going to be using the headsets. The third one would be, can I get some technical support? And technical support could be anything from helping you out with nailing down the development of an app, for example, all the way through help me deploy, a big base of devices in a large fleet. Fourth, I'd go down the path of security and privacy. So the vendor has to be able to tell you how they deal with security and the privacy of your corporate information. Philip was mentioning a point about the tracking data, tracking data is critical to keep safe, but all your personal information and specifically confidential information in the context of a business use.
Fantastic.
But the last one, because I've got 5 and they're my go-to, and every time I go back to those. Once you've got all that, so can you help me understand the onboarding process from the day we receive the devices in the office to the time it's has come for us to roll these out in the field? So initial side loading of the apps, connecting to Wi-Fi, setting up your customization, setting up your accounts, mobile device management, as well as access to content. Do you have an app store for business, for example, which we have just announced last week?
Fantastic. Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Last one. I think is a lot. So we have some questions coming in already. So
so I guess this is the future sci-fi sort of version of the questions.
Crystal ball.
Crystal ball.
I mean, what are the most exciting trends that you think will emerge in the headset market over the next couple of years? And what will that enable organizations to be able to do in Australia?
Yeah, I think you've all heard of 5G and HTC Vive. We are convinced that 5G and XR, so extended realities, and we're talking VR here, but they'll come together at some point. And at Vive, we've got that vision that's called Vive Reality, and that's a point in time where 5G meets VR. And once you've got that, then you can use the very high bandwidth and the super low latency of 5G to enable VR experiences on the go. So think about today, if you do tethered VR, you need a big PC with a pretty powerful graphic card. You have to have on some of the standalone headsets, obviously I've got behind me, but you have got onboarded battery, you've got GPU, you've got CPU. Once you start shifting all this processing power to the cloud with 5G, there's going to be a great impact on the industrial design of the products by vendors like us being able to remove the components one by one and leaving the responsibility of all of the processing of the signal and in the information to the network. So that's the point in time where HMDs, as in headsets, become goggles, and potentially sometime down the track, all the way down to glasses.
Excellent.
And the use we see a lot, obviously, and you guys are very well aware of that, is training and simulation is huge in VR, but we're seeing a growing demand for spatial collaboration solutions as well, specifically in a large market in a large country like Australia, where we have to redefine how we travel, how we collaborate, how we design, brainstorm, create together in the workplace. And obviously being able to do all that in virtual reality is fantastic. And with the super powerful networks that our telcos are building, organizations will be able to get their workforce to use VR solutions and VR technologies everywhere, anytime, to do virtually anything across all industry verticals.
No, fantastic.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've got a few questions have come through already.
We do.
So I think one just came through as a good follow-up, actually. Will VR have to give way to devices that can do both VR and AR? Yeah, be keen for your thoughts on that, Thomas.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And at some point, if you remember, we launched in 2019 a product called the Vive Cosmos, which was initially designed to be the very first modular headsets. In other words, a product that the chassis of the headset is what it is, and then you start swapping over the faceplates depending on what you want to do, right? And where you want to sit on that virtuality continuum. So if you want to be in the mixed reality space, you'd slot in a mixed reality plate, and that would enable mixed reality solutions, all the way through to VR. So the concept was there, but we haven't been able to materialize that completely because there's a few technical challenges around that. What we see at the moment is that there is still a fragmentation between AR solutions in the workplace and VR. And for me, we're still not at a point where there will be a device that can do everything well. And it's, do you need, is it something that the industry and the market needs? I mean, there's always, big debates. Where are we going to be able to make a compromise on quality, on latency, on performance, on design, to get to that point? And at this stage, whilst it seems like a very good thing for us to have on the radar, not going to happen in 2021 for sure.
Yeah, no, okay, fair enough. So we've got a few more have come through. Is there a public roadmap for Focus 3 updates regarding SDK?
There is access to a developer forum. As you know, we've published the brand new Wave SDK 4.0.0, and I'd be more than happy to share the link, which is a public link. And there's lots going on, obviously, access to the SDK, but there's a lot of chatter around some of the new features that we've announced last week. Roadmap, there's things that we can talk about openly and other things that we are not ready to unveil. But yes, there's certainly a lot of activity. So happy to share the link to the developer forum if you're keen.
Okay, yeah, no, that'd be great. Thanks, and we can add it to this deck perhaps. When it's available later on.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a few more and only a few minutes. So I see, Brian's asked a question about UV cleaning and whether it can deteriorate the material of the headset faster. I mean, as far as we know, we haven't seen anything that's clear either way. So there's that one there. So do product warranties very much. So someone's commented Oculus Quest head straps are starting to go, and some of them may break outside of the warranty period. I guess that's sort of it's like with any device really, if it breaks outside the warranty period, yeah, you might be in a bit of strife. But from memory, the warranty is typically around 24 months. Am I right? Is that everyone else's understanding?
I think so, yeah. Yep.
It depends again, but if you subscribe, again, just talking about Vive here, if you subscribe to our business warranty, you've got a 24-month warranty of everything that's in the box.
Mm-hmm.
In the context of the Focus 3, we even warrant the battery for 24 months. So when you get a full kit, accessories, HMD, peripherals, everything is getting this 24-month warranty. If you buy accessories, and typically what we see in the market, if you buy separate accessories, you only get 12-month warranty. So yeah, just be very clear. Read the T's and C's. Sometimes I know it's little fine print. You can't be bothered reading it, but it's always better to know what you're in for. In terms of what the warranties cover, yes, they do vary a bit. What does actually change a lot between one vendor to the other is the speed or the pace at which they are able to manage your requests. Is there some form of priority service when you are a business customer? On the Vive side, yes, there is. And then depending on the relationship that we forge with the client and with the user, there's things that we can do to make sure that we get to the outcome on our side, which is making sure there's minimum disruption on your business, right? So if you're calling us and you've got an issue with a charger, surely we can do things that do not involve a lengthy process of organizing collection, getting the charger back to our repair center in Sydney, getting it assessed, and a week down the track, send a new one. We're not going to bother doing that. The next day you get one on the mail, and 2 days later you receive it. Headset, very different, because there's a bit of a trickier triage process that needs to happen, but we've got you covered. We'll send you a courier for pickup, and we manage all the process from A to Z.
So I think the onus there really is to have a good conversation and ask the hard questions, I think. Absolutely.
And when you're in my position, I'd rather have the hard questions asked before than after, because it's so much easier to address.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Avoids disappointment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. What else have we got?
So we've got a few more questions. We've probably only got time for maybe one more at the moment. But we can any that are directed for Thomas. Perhaps if he's willing, we can get them answered and post them even in the LinkedIn event page that are on the answers to.
I'm happy. How much more time do we have? 2 minutes. What sort of supply challenges you face obtaining headsets at scale currently in Australia? Thanks, Bruce. So it all comes down to the secret sauce is having good relationships and knowing who's doing what in the market. The better we get to know you guys, the more closer we can work, and the better we can anticipate what the demand's going to look like. If it comes down to communication, planning, forecasting, if these three things are done, we're covered. We are a Taiwanese organization, so in some respect, quite self-sufficient in terms of the set of third-party vendors that we work with. Obviously, with COVID, there's a few challenges around freight. Sea freight becomes a little bit more affordable than air freight. Air freight has absolutely gone, through the roof. There's less availability than ever before, and the prices have gone completely crazy. So, but that's the beauty of having a one-to-one relationship with your vendor, and if they're transparent and open to have a conversation, you'll get access to these answers. Well, certainly with us, absolutely no problems.
Excellent.
One more? Does HTC have any organizational infrastructure to act as channel partner for enterprise application? Yes. There's a couple of things we've announced last week. We've got the first of its kind independent software vendor program. So if you've got content that you think would work very well with our platform, and you'd like to benefit from our brand new business app store, there's a link on our website that we can put on the at the back end of the deck. That is basically an expression of interest. You get in touch with our developer relationships teams, and the conversation starts, and we see where next from there. So yes, there is indeed that kind of relationship for both developers and enterprise channels. Enterprise channels would be through distribution. So I've got an exclusive distributor here in Australia called Cinex, and more than happy to facilitate introductions for anyone who is keen.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Thomas.
Well, that is 11, I suppose.
Yeah. Yep. So
let's make sure we address the other questions offline, because they're all very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
We start talking about mobile networks and 4G, 5G. That's our heritage, right? That's our legacy at HTC. So very keen.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, no, we'll do that.
Cool. So we've got a takeaway slide. We won't run through it because it's already past the hour, but it will be available post the session. So yep, next slide. Thanks, Tessa. So thank you everyone for attending. We hope it was really useful for you, and thank you very much to Thomas for your time and your insights. I think they're very valuable, and again, very timely as well. So if you want to get in touch with Thomas directly, we've linked his LinkedIn profile. So when you get the deck, you'll be able to get in touch with him. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day, and we look forward to hosting you with our next webinar, which will probably be in the next month and a half to 2 months. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
See
See you later. Bye.
Bye.